Welcome to Sociology Vibes, where we simplify challenging ideas into easy to understand insights. Today, our focus is on the explanation of a hypothesis to help us understand social research. A hypothesis is an educated guess about what researchers or scientists can expect to happen as they conduct their research studies, such as experiments, surveys, and observations. A hypothesis is not just a random guess. It is based on what scientists already know about a topic from previous studies, existing information, or patterns they observe in society. A hypothesis is a prediction about how things might be related. And researchers have an idea of what they think they will find based on what they may have already read or observed in previous studies. Hypothesis is a written statement that predicts relationships between variables. Variable in research is anything that could change, fluctuate, or take on different values across people, groups, environments, and interactions. Researchers test, observe, and compare variables. Examples of variables include age, gender, social class, parenting, drug use, and anxiety, or any characteristic or condition scientists test to determine a relationship, pattern, influence, or outcome. An independent variable is what causes a change in the relationship between variables in a hypothesis. Dependent variable is the outcome that is measured. Let's start with a basic example that will help you later identify independent and dependent variables in more complex hypotheses. When it rains, the sidewalks get wet. This is a statement. It is also prediction. The rain is the independent variable, and wet sidewalks is the dependent variable because rain is causing sidewalks to change from dry to wet. Whether a sidewalk gets wet depends on rain. In this case, we have one independent variable and one dependent variable. However, a hypothesis can have more than one of both. For example, we can say that when it rains and snows, sidewalks, people, and cars get wet. In this case, we have two independent variables, rain and snow, and three dependent variables, sidewalks, people, and cars. Each time we add a variable to a hypothesis, we must test and measure it to identify a pattern. Does rain really cause wet sidewalks? The first observation might be a fluke. Second observation, a coincidence. The third observation might give us some basic level of confidence. But now we also have to observe rain and people, rain and cars, snow and sidewalks, snow and people, and snow and cars. And as you can see, this requires more time, and time is money. How much time and finances researchers have will influence the variables and complexity of research. Let's now explore a few sociological hypotheses. Individuals in lower social classes report higher levels of stress than those in higher social classes. In this example, social class is the independent variable or the cause, while stress is the dependent variable or the outcome. A person's level of stress depends on their social class. Individuals with higher levels of education and greater parental involvement during childhood are more likely to achieve higher occupational prestige status in adulthood than those with lower levels of education and less parental involvement. This hypothesis has three variables and predicts that a person's future job status is shaped by both their level of education and the support they receive growing up. Therefore, education attainment and parental involvement are the independent variables, or the causes, and occupational prestige is the dependent variable, or the outcome. Individuals who are exposed to higher levels of social media use and experience greater peer pressure are more likely to report lower self-esteem than those with lower social media use and less peer pressure. This example predicts that social media use and peer pressure both influence a person's level of self-esteem. In sociology, variables are social factors that can vary from place to place or from person to person, such as neighborhood and community interactions, by income or education. For example, a sociologist might predict that people who live in neighborhoods with more shared public spaces, such as parks or sidewalks, will report higher levels of interaction with their neighbors. This prediction connects two variables, public spaces and neighborhood interaction. A hypothesis gives sociologists a framework for research. Instead of relying on assumptions, sociologists collect evidence such as surveys, interviews, observations, or existing statistics to see whether the predicted relationship appears in the data. Hypotheses help sociologists systematically study, test, and measure patterns in society. Researchers often also study the same topic, but choose different variables because they're asking different versions of a question. If I change this, will that be different? For example, are higher levels of stress or occupational prestige or self-esteem influenced by different independent variables? Social life is complex and influenced by many different social factors at the same time. Researchers isolate variables so they can better understand each piece of the bigger picture. Research is cumulative, and one or a few studies cannot explain everything. Rather, many studies together help us see patterns and connections. Researchers also can't study everything at once, so they choose a few specific variables at a time that they can realistically measure. Not all research includes a hypothesis, and some studies include more than one. Some studies focus on research questions instead of hypotheses, but all research begins with a research question. All research starts with a question, and you already notice in your everyday life. You might wonder, why am I more stressed on some days? That's a research question. And you might think, well, maybe it's because I didn't sleep enough. It's a hypothesis. You can't run full scientific studies in your everyday life, but you can notice patterns, ask questions, and observe what shapes your experiences in social life. And that's powerful, because once you begin to see patterns, you can't unsee them. And that makes sociology worth exploring further, don't you think? Thank you for watching. Be sure to comment below with your thoughts, questions, or any topics you'd like us to explore next. Let's keep the conversation going and our community growing. See you in the next Sociology Vibes video.